Mississippi.
From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. I say that every week, and I love to say it because it's so true. We really celebrate the outdoors here on SuperTalk Outdoors. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network and or on SuperTalk TV at C Spire TV. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's March the 7th, 2022. Amazing, like I say every week, how fast time is flying. We're already in March. Wow. Hey, I want to mention for the YouTube and Facebook audience, you can see over my shoulder Ukrainian flag. I've flown that since last week, and we'll keep it there for a good long time, just as a solemn memory of what the people in Ukraine are having to endure. I actually have on my show Coast View, we're actually recording at 11 o'clock today. We're going to record a young woman by the name of Laurie, who is working with foster children in Ukraine. She had a chance to get out of the country, but she stayed because she said there's too much work to be done. So we'll be talking to her for my show on Coast View, and I'm sure it will be shared across the SuperTalk Mississippi network as well. I'm looking forward to that. Well, you know, we've been talking a lot about the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. We're going to talk a little bit more about it this morning to kind of give you an update on what the latest is, and then we're going to talk turkey. Once we get the update done, we're going to talk turkey for the rest of the show today. And I should also point out that we're beginning to see a few specks arriving in some of the honey holes here along coastal Mississippi, especially in Biloxi's Back Bay where I live. My son Jordan caught a really good one Saturday morning, but there you have to work for them. You know, the holes where you might have caught 5 or 6, you know, you're only going to catch one, and you got to move to another one, and you'll catch another one. So you got to work hard, but it's a good sign. Hopefully this rain that we're about to get is not too much and mess up the salinity in the bays again or the backwaters of coastal Mississippi. I'm happy to broadcast each week from the Foundation Studio. You know, this is a nonprofit organization that's working to protect the outdoor legacy of Mississippi. They're officially known as the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife Fisheries and Parks, not to be confused with the Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. It's actually the only dedicated foundation in Mississippi that directly supports the Mississippi Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. They provide financial support for wildlife and educational projects that are really important to the Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. The foundation is also working on Mississippi's conservation efforts. They're really working to kind of bring our conservation efforts to the next level. And so they're involved in issues that are important to outdoorsmen and women, like the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that I talk about all the time, something I'm super passionate about. In short, we're lucky to have the foundation and the dedicated volunteers involved in it. And I should also point out the many people who have helped to fund it. I've had the opportunity here on SuperTalk Outdoors to spend some time with the chairman of the foundation, John Taylor. Man, he's such a good friend, and what a dedicated outdoors leader he is. He loves the outdoors, and you can tell it every time we sit down together. And, of course, the visit we had here on SuperTalk Outdoors was terrific. I've also had Executive Committee Chris Guritz on the phone. And, again, he's another one that just loves the outdoors and is really dedicated to doing what he can to help take it to the next level. And we've also had a board member, Trent Malloy, on SuperTalk Outdoors as well. But their love of the outdoors is contagious. They're putting their leadership and their energy and their money into this effort. And, you know, there are a lot of people like them. And I want to, in the near future, to have other leaders who are involved in the foundation and share their inspiring stories. They all serve as excellent examples of the sort of commitments Mississippians, Mississippi outdoorsmen and women are willing to make and should make to protect our outdoor legacy in Mississippi. And as I say every week, Mississippi is the capital of the outdoors in the United States. And I believe it strongly. The foundation is working really hard to keep us there. Okay, so again, I've talked a lot about the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. I'm just going to give you a quick update on this groundbreaking legislation in Mississippi. The legislation would actually create a fund in Mississippi dedicated to conservation efforts. Having a trust fund will give us the ability to compete with other states for an enormous amount of federal funds to do a lot of innovative projects focused on conservation, wildlife, habitat creation, and so many other innovative efforts. And to really kind of what I've said is kind of take our outdoor enjoyment opportunities to the next level. It's estimated currently that Mississippi misses out on about $40 million a year in federal matching funds. So we really need this. It's a big deal. It cleared the House of Representatives last year, as I've said before, 117-2, but it stalled in the Senate. The bill ultimately died last year, but it was brought back up this year. It cleared the House 117-4 this year. The Senate passed a version of the bill as well. And what I've been hearing lately is that they're making progress. I want you to know, too, that my team and I, as I mentioned last week, we've asked the Senate Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Chairman Neil Whaley to join us here on SuperTalk Outdoors. So, again, we've invited him, I think, 2 weeks in a row now, but he hasn't accepted our invite. But what I hear is that he's been really working hard to get the trust fund done, and that's really good news. I actually did a little research on Chairman Whaley, and I found an article that ran in the Clarion Ledger on February 2020. And but incidentally, Chairman Whaley is from Potts Camp, Mississippi. That was a new one for me, incidentally. But it's between New Albany and Holly Springs, just north of Oxford. But he said this in the Clarion Ledger: "I've been a hunter and fisherman my whole life. I'm a landowner interested in conservation. I live on our family farm. I've lived here my whole life. I'm an avid duck, deer, and bird hunter." Let me say again, Chairman Whaley, we look forward to having you on Super Talk Outdoors. And believe me, we're going to welcome you with open arms. Your conservation leadership is incredibly important to Mississippi. I also want to thank the chairman of the House Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Committee, Bill Kincaid. He's been incredibly focused on this and passionate about this effort as well. So it takes a lot of leaders to make something like this go. So where are we with the trust fund? Here's what I'm hearing. The Senate really, as we've discussed in the past, had some issues with diverting a percentage of outdoor and sporting good taxes to the trust fund. So they're considering what is essentially an annual appropriation. The intentions of the House bill, though, I should point out, was to create a multi-year dedicated fund, given that most conservation efforts are not one and done. It takes multiple years to get a conservation project done. And it also, multi-year projects are the kind of projects that we're seeking support from the federal government. So the annual appropriation isn't the best case scenario, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. Now what we hope is that they put significant money in the bill. And as I said last week, we're super lucky to have Senator Briggs Hobson as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He's from Vicksburg. Come on now. We all know this. He's surrounded by some of the most important hunting and fishing land in the state of Mississippi. He gets the role Outdoors plays in Mississippi. So we're really fortunate to have Senator Hobson in that leadership role. We've also had conversations here about private land. Most Mississippians are not rich landowners. They would dedicate themselves to doing more to create wildlife habitat and to do other kinds of conservation efforts, but they just don't have the resources to do it. So the majority of the federal funds, and that is billions of dollars on the federal level, is in the Farm Bill. All of that is private land. So thanks to the leadership of Thad Cochran on getting us to that point back in the mid-'80s. So it's long since been decided that given nearly 90% of the land in Mississippi is private land, you can't have a viable conservation effort if you don't include private land. So I hear the Senate's making good progress on that in that area, but I also hear that they're thinking about limiting the private land, to getting only 50% of the funds. Now, on the surface, that's progress, and I will admit that. And it also seems to make sense. But when you consider that this will limit the amount of federal funds that will be available to us, that's something they should really reconsider. Yeah, if I just did a swag, a silly, wild-ass guess on the estimate of federal funds that we may miss out on if we limit to private land to only 50% of the fund, we'd miss out on about $20 million a year. So my question is, why limit it? Let the quality of the project decide what we want to go forward with. I'm pleased also to hear that non-governmental organizations are going to be involved. This is really important because you really want all stakeholders who are involved in conservation involved in this. If what I'm hearing is accurate, the good news is the House and Senate Wildlife and Fisheries and Parks leaders are working together. They're focused. I want them to stay focused. We need them to stay focused. Let's get this done ASAP. And I want to thank everyone for their leadership. Hey, when we come back from the break, we're going to spend the rest of the show with Captain Caleb Harrington from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and we're going to talk turkey today. We'll see you after.
Leading the conversation on Mississippi's outdoors, it's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Foundation Studio. Thank you for bearing with me during the first segment as I kind of gave you an update on the Conservation Trust Fund. And this is so important. I wouldn't be spending so much time on it. But, this is the kind of thing that Super Talk Outdoors ought to focus on. As I said before, we're not going to spend too much time talking about the legislature unless it's something that's happening in Jackson, and it's important for me to tell you why what that is important to you as outdoorsmen and women. And certainly the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund is one of those issues. Now we're going to shift gears and talk turkey. I've been really looking forward to welcoming my friend Captain Caleb Harrington to Super Talk Outdoors. I'll tell you a lot about it, but before we go any further, let me just say welcome to Super Talk Outdoors, Caleb.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's great to see you, my friend. Hey, you've been in the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks for 24 years. When you look back on it, does it feel like time flies real fast, or that it's that you can remember all 24 years? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, time does get by. I'm actually a second-generation conservation officer. My dad worked with the department for 34 years down in Jeff Davis County, and that had a strong role in me choosing a career as a conservation officer.
Well, that's good. It's interesting because, and we'll get into this because I want to know where your love of the outdoors comes from and all of that. But so much of it, whether you decide to be a conservation officer or just want to go do hunting and fishing, so much of that is really determined by what we're taught by our parents and our grandparents, and it's kind of a generational love of the outdoors, that's for sure. You've been assigned to the South region. Tell us what that South region encompasses.
Well, it actually goes from Claiborne County all the way south to you guys, to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So it covers a large region and a very different types of habitat. Sure
it really does, and we'll get into some of that here in just a second. But one of the things, when you think about deer hunting, and Mississippi State's done some great research on this. When you think about deer hunting, people tend to think that the deer in coastal Mississippi or in South Mississippi are different genetics. They are not actually. They're exactly the same genetics. But what determines whether they have the big horns and the big bodies and all that is really generational nutrition. And, of course, the nutrition in South Mississippi is not, in many cases, is not as great, although we've heard incredible tales of really big deer being killed down here. But one of the things that most people may not realize is that turkey hunting in the South region is as good as anywhere else in the state, isn't it?
It is. It is. Our southeast portion of our region has shown some uptick in turkey populations, and southwest Mississippi over toward the river, Copiah County, Jefferson County, Claiborne County, absolutely those populations are still strong.
So, Caleb, when you think about, and kind of very high level, and we'll come back to some of the details in a second, but when you think about turkey hunting in Mississippi, you think about duck hunting, you think about deer hunting, then you think about turkey hunting. How does turkey hunting rate? I mean, how popular is turkey hunting in Mississippi?
It has become much more popular than it was in the past. Us turkey hunters like myself, who've been at it for a while, the other seasons are just something to do until turkey season gets here. In the past couple of years, I a lot of that due to COVID. License sales and interest in turkey hunting has absolutely increased. Our non-resident license sales have doubled in the past couple of years. So yeah, it is showing an uptake. Yeah.
The secret is out, and that's actually required some new approaches to licensing, particularly as it relates to out of state. But again, we'll come back to that in just a second. Let's take a step back for a second. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little town called Carson, Mississippi. It's in Jeff Davis County, and that's where I was raised and learned how to turkey hunt. So
you started out hunting turkey?
I did. I really actually started out as a squirrel hunter in the mid 80s as a kid, you know, and the turkey population in the mid to late 80s really became high at its highest point. So they were there to hunt, and my dad introduced me to it at a young age.
That's amazing. You know, I did not kill my first turkey until just a few years ago. I went up to extreme north Mississippi with my friend Al Hopkins. He has a farm up there, and in Walnut, Mississippi, I might add. And man, it was a great experience. But my sons had killed had killed turkeys. My son Jordan, when he was in law school at Ole Miss, he would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go to private land not far from University of Mississippi. And I remember one particular span of time when he got on the same turkey every single morning for I don't know how many days. It was a long, drawn-out deal. He never got the turkey. But that's part of the deal, isn't it, Caleb? It's just the pursuit of it, having this conversation with the turkey and knowing it's there and knowing it's responding to your call. There's something incredibly addictive about that, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not like, deer hunting where you're sitting in the stand and hoping. You get to communicate with these turkeys using various types of techniques and calls. And you start your children. I started my child at a young age. You know, I killed my first one when I was 12, and I remember everything about it sitting right next to my dad. And my son did the same at age 9. So this introducing children, and not only children, just adults that have never been before, know that they're going to make a lot of mistakes, and just learn how to call. It's trial and error. But it is
trial and error. But I there's so many great examples of how people describe it. Probably one of the best descriptions I've heard is from Will Primos, who said that when he's in the woods pursuing a turkey, and I'm just paraphrasing, but essentially, he talks about this almost like divine, experience. And then what he goes on to say is that he gets that in church, but that the turkey hunting experience is even more than church, because he feels like he's in a prayer when he's hunting, and he doesn't care if he shoots or not. It's just this being silent in the woods and having this opportunity to have this conversation with this incredible bird. He describes it literally as a religious experience. You feel the same way, don't you?
Absolutely. If first thing on a spring morning when you hear the first gobble, no matter how old you are, it gets you. It's great to see it in a young hunter or a new hunter, the excitement that comes along with it. Since I started, things have changed, populations have changed, gear has changed, calls have changed. But one thing that hasn't changed is the turkey still gobbles. And the chess match between hunter and gobbler, like you said earlier, can go on for days, even the entire season without success. And that's a major part of it, is the chase.
My son Jordan and I were hunting together. I have two sons, Jordan and Justin. Justin lives up in New York City. But on this particular hunt, I was with Jordan. And we were in the hills, not far outside of Meridian. And man, we were on this bird for a couple of days, and we were up and down and all around. I mean, it was just, I remember many times thinking, it's a good thing I'm in shape, because when you're in the hills doing this, it can be very taxing physically, but it's also taxing mentally, because in this particular case, we were having this conversation. The bird seemed a little further away than it actually was, and it was because he was on the other side of the hills, and the wind was blowing away from us. It just felt like it was a long way away. And he said, come on, Dad, we need to get up over this hill, and we may actually be able to see it once we get over on the other side. And so we ease up on top of the hill. We're kind of moving pretty fast. And as soon as we topped the hill, the turkey was moving fast toward us. The turkey probably was 15 yards away from us, man. It scared us and the turkey to death. And as you know, under those scenarios, the turkey literally vanished. And we didn't even have time to even think about what we had just seen. But you've been in that situation many times, haven't you? Sure,
I have. Throughout the years, many encounters, very similar to what you just spoke of. They're a very unique creature to hunt, and when you think you've got it figured out, you don't.
When you think you got it figured out, you don't. Yeah. For people who maybe have gone turkey hunting and not had the opportunity to hear the gobble answer your call, whatever the call was you did, but to hear that gobble, for people who've never been before but love to hunt, man, I would strongly encourage you, because the truth is turkey habitat is really scattered all over Mississippi. Whereas, if you're going after the big deer, you got to go certain areas. Of course, ducks are not widely available. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Captain Caleb Harrington, and we're going to talk turkey today. So we'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I'm so thrilled to have Captain Caleb Harrington with us today. His passion for the outdoors, his passion for turkey, have really, he's a second generation conservation officer. And because of dedicated people like Caleb, man, we've got people who are focused on making sure we can protect the resource, make sure people follow the appropriate laws, et cetera, as it relates to hunting turkey. And we'll get into some of that during this segment. But, Caleb, one of the things I've heard over and over again from many of your partners in your efforts there at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks is that during the pandemic, after a long stretch of seeing the people becoming less interested in hunting, people tend to get hunting, the love of hunting, from their fathers and their grandfathers. So if they don't have that, they're going to have to get it from a friend or someone else. And what we've seen is a decline in interest in hunting and fishing across Mississippi for a number of years. But the pandemic actually reintroduced some people back to the outdoors. As you pointed out, license sales were up significantly. We've seen a lot of interest in Mississippi from out of the state. Part of the reason this is because if you go to other states, what you find is, in some cases, deer season is earlier, so that when their season's over, they want to come here and hunt. Same thing with turkeys. Same thing with ducks, I guess, as well. But what that uptick is good for outdoors enjoyment for the state. It's good for the fact that we're going to be introducing more generations to it, because that's one of the most important things we can do is share the outdoors with kids so that they can then pass it to their kids. And that's really important to you as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. But we have, this year is a little different. We have a regulation that has been put into place as a non-resident turkey draw. And what that is that, like you said, the coronavirus absolutely had an effect on the number of people that showed up to hunt. But now the southeastern states have decided to back up their turkey opening days to the 1st of April. So that leaves our state, Mississippi, as one of the only states left with a lot of public land for hunters from other states to be able to come to with an early March opening. So what that did was, along with the coronavirus, seeing that the number of non-resident turkey hunters had doubled, we had to have a plan of action to know that we were the only game in town, and there were probably going to be a lot of non-resident hunters that take that opportunity. So we had a regulation take effect where we would have what was known as a non-resident public land draw, where we drew 1,100 non-resident hunters to be able to hunt public land, which is our national forest, wildlife refuges, etc.
Well, I think that was a smart move, and it's recognizing the fact that we've really got to manage the resource as best we can, and it's going to help residents too as well. You know, one of the things that why don't we do? Let's come back just a second. Let's talk about season dates,
Sure.
Limits, legal gobblers, all that. Let's kind of cover some of the basics.
Sure. Actually, the youth season opens tomorrow, March the 8th. So I suspect strongly there will be a lot of children, young adults under the age of 16, and parents that are late for school or work, or maybe even play hooky for a couple days this week, being it opens during the week. That season lasts from March 8th to the 14th. Again, children or young adults under the age of 16 can take advantage of that whole week to youth hunt. Our adult season opens March the 15th, again on a Tuesday, and it ends May 1st. Now, as far as limits go, the bag limit is 3 gobblers. For children under the age of 16, that is any gobbler, a limit of 3.
Yeah.
For adults, it has to be an adult gobbler with a beard greater than 6 inches or a full fan.
Well, that's okay. So let's by the way, let me say this, that if you're engaged in the youth hunt, a lot of dads are going to be hunting, in some cases mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers, maybe even in some cases, hunting with their children. If you get a gobbler, send it to us at the SuperTalk Outdoor Facebook page. We'd love to post it and share it with other people. You know, I'm very passionate about kids. I remember a stretch of hunting where I never even held a gun for like 10 years because my kids, I was hunting with my kids. And I'm sure you've done the same thing, haven't you?
Yes, sir. I'm there now. I'm 14, and I've been sitting right beside him on every turkey he's killed and every deer. So, yeah, he just uses my 20 gauge, and we carry on.
I love that. So tell me about, so the turkey game check. Tell me about that. Yeah,
the turkey game check, we started that back in the spring of 2019. And what game check is before a turkey hunter enters the woods, he has to have what is known as a harvest report card. Now, that harvest report card can be an app that you download to your smartphone, or it can be a paper physical copy that is easily available through an Outdoor Digest that you pick up at any licensed vendor, or it's a printable version that you can get offline under mdwfp.com/gamecheck, or it could be something as simple as a note card. So what happens is when you enter the woods, you've got your game check card, you harvest a bird. Before you move that bird, you can either pull out your smartphone with the app that you've downloaded to the phone free of charge, and it's what we call a one-stop shop. You enter that bird right then, and you're finished. Going to gather data on beard length, spur length, and what county that you harvested the bird in. If you choose to do the paper copy, you will either have to call it in, 1-800-BE-SMART, and they will give you a confirmation number, which you have to 10 o'clock to get that confirmation number. But again, before you move the bird, the process starts even with the physical form, to where you have to put your name, your address, your telephone number, and your hunting license number on the check card before you move the bird. That harvest report card will have to have the first bird that you killed, along, if you were fortunate and killed a second or third, that harvest report card will have to reflect all 3 or 2 birds.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, what a great tool to really understand what's happening across the state. So let's say if you're going to check someone, let's say someone, you're waiting on someone who's in there turkey hunting, they come out and you're a conservation officer. Is that one of the things that you're asking for?
Yes, we do. We check. If a hunter comes out and he's been successful, or we are just checking for license, we always ask for the harvest report card. So you can produce it either digitally or on paper. But it is, and one of the things that we look for sure now, after being here this is the 4th spring, so it's not new. All hunters should know that by now you have to game check a wild turkey upon harvest.
Well, that's good news. Okay. I hate to say this, but I do know people, and I've heard of people who leave their deer corn feeders out and just keep filling them until turkey season starts. And anyone who does that doesn't really appreciate all that turkey culture that you and I were talking about earlier, the pursuit of the bird and the conversations you have and all of that. How often do you see that? And do you find it to be a problem in Mississippi?
Well, first of all, hunting turkeys with an 8 of bait is prohibited. It's illegal. As conservation officers, we do encounter that. We encounter people who are continuing to put their feeders out. We encounter people who scatter grain on the ground, which is also a violation of supplemental feeding. But it is common. It is unlawful to hunt turkeys with an 8 of bait.
So when you catch someone doing it, what does it mean for them? What price do they pay?
So if we catch someone hunting wild turkeys with an 8 of bait, that is what is a Class 2 violation. So that Class 2 violation, is a monetary value of at least $100, up to $500. So, any violation like that is pretty expensive.
It's expensive, and it's kind of a stain,
It takes away from the what we were talking about earlier, the chase. That's the gobbles, the chase, sitting over a baited area does take away from that experience.
And as a conservation officer, any of us who've watched these reality shows on TV, on National Geographic or whatever, about conservation officers, all over the United States, as a conservation officer, you kind of heard it all, haven't you?
I have. I've seen a little bit of it all, and some of it, was disheartening. But as a whole, turkey hunters are after the chase more than they are the kill.
Yeah, that's really a great way to say it. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Caleb Harrington. See you after this break.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. We're talking turkey today with Caleb Harrington. He's a captain with the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. He's a conservation officer. His father was a conservation officer. And, love it. I mean, Caleb's been doing this for 24 years, right, Caleb? 24 years?
Correct.
And your dad did it for 34 years, which I think is so cool. Just great generational, passion for the outdoors in more ways than one. You love to hunt, but you also like to make sure that people are following the law and conserving the wildlife the way that they should. And I appreciate you so much for that. Hey, listen, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you guys were, I would say the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, along with the USFW, were involved in a major turkey poaching case, multi-state deal. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so a few years back, we got some tips from the public that there were some violations taking place, and our state officers investigated it and were able to acquire search warrants for residences. We served those warrants and discovered numerous violations, not only in the state of Mississippi, but also in the states of Kansas and Nebraska. So that investigation, as we progressed on, led to violations in other states. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife was involved, and we were able to successfully investigate and prosecute this case, dubbed as Operation Longbeard. I would like to, at this time, to give a shout out, I guess, to our sister agency there, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Agent Brad Rabelais, Sydney Charbonnet, and Officer Ben Bryant. Our local officers that were involved were Master Sergeant Randy Cooley, Sergeant Major Jake Guess, and Lieutenant Sheila Smith. These prosecutions led to right at $100,000 worth of fines. It led to, pardon me, I might have to read it all. It led to 3 years of state probation, 13 years of federal probation, 13 years of a worldwide hunting ban where some of these individuals, 4 of them, could not hunt anywhere in the world for a lengthy amount of time. Now, what these guys did and gals did was they just trespassed on numerous pieces of property, 15 total in the state of Mississippi. We were able to prosecute for those properties, for those landowners who, in some cases, never knew they were even being poached on. The hunters carried on to the states of Kansas and Nebraska and did the same thing there, and killed an excessive amount of turkeys there and here. So we were proud of that prosecution, and it was a lot of man hours and work went into it.
So Caleb, were they doing it for enjoyment, or were they selling the hunts? What was their motivation behind it?
No, their motivation behind it was they were addicted to it. Said they couldn't stop. They just wanted to hunt turkeys so badly that they took advantage of private property owners for the most part when they weren't there. They weren't in town. To get in their mindset of knowing exactly why they took it to the extreme that they did, I will never know. But they did. They had a group that was with the same mindset. They were just traveling poachers.
Wow, it's so interesting that people would go to that length. That's the same thing as sort of like hunting deer with lights at night. I mean, I still don't fully understand or appreciate what the mindset is for doing that. You know, people just, you're always going to have people that are finding ways around the laws. And again, like you say, you can't necessarily read their minds or understand for sure what their motivations are, but they just get addicted and they do what they do, and they find enjoyment in it, whatever, even though it may be, outside the law. And your job is to find those people and to work with a team of people to sort them out and identify them and charge them and try to keep the resource as protected as possible. And you've really dedicated your life to that, haven't you?
Yes, sir. And a major part of that, we all have, when we put this uniform on, there's some measure of pride that goes along with it. And we take it seriously at the Department of Wildlife for any violations that take place. We've already caught a group similar to this already this year before season even opened. So yeah, I guess you could say it's a passion in itself.
Well, Caleb, it's been an absolute pleasure to visit with you this morning. Your passion really shows through, and I can't wait to have you back on the show again. We'll do a check-in with you about midway through the turkey season and just see how the season is going and see how you guys are doing. But this has been Captain Caleb Harrington. He's with the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks in the South region. 24 years with the department and super dedicated. It's been a pleasure. Anyway, have a great day. Stay safe. Stay safe in the outdoors and pray for the people of Ukraine. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next month.